Right, so just testing once more, just see if this is working. Brilliant. Sorry about that, Chair, and thank you for your patience.
That's okay. So do I need to go back to the beginning? Yeah.
I'm afraid so.
Right. Good morning, members. Good morning, members of the public. You're all very welcome to Babergh District Council's Planning Committee meeting on the 4th of November 2020. May I first of all remind you of some of the domestic arrangements. Okay, good. Please ensure that the microphones and cameras are turned off when not in use, that you do not interrupt other speakers, that if you wish to speak, point of order, declare and interest, or request an adjournment, please use the hands up function on the taskbar. Members are reminded that they should not have alternative communication lines open, other Skype chats, etc., and that if you are contacted by a third party during an application, you should bring this to the legal advisor's attention. That if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. If members do lose connection to the meeting, that they must contact the Member Support Officer, Mandy Smith, as soon as possible. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The council, members of the public and press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and press are not lawfully excluded. I'd now like to introduce the officers present to help here this morning. Mark Russell, Area Planning Manager, Bradley Heffer, Case Officer, Andy Perez, Planning Lawyer, and Robert Carmichael, Governance Officer. And I think I'm going to need all your help this morning. Can I now move to the agenda, please? You have it in front of you, members. So item number 1 is substitutes and apologies. Rob, are we all present and correct?
Thank you, Chair. I believe so, but we're just going to run through a very quick roll call.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Just to so that everyone is aware. So, Councillor Sue Ayres.
Present and good morning.
Councillor Melanie Barrett.
Yes, present.
Councillor Busby.
Present.
Councillor Hinton.
Present.
Councillor Jameson.
Present.
Councillor McLaren.
Present.
Councillor Osborne.
Good morning. Present.
Councillor Owen.
Present.
Councillor Parker.
Present.
And Councillor Plum.
Present.
Thank you, Chair. Including yourself, we are all present.
Thank you very much. Right. Declarations of interest.
Yeah, I also
Are
declare,
there any declare? Sorry.
yeah, Peter, I declare that I've had dealings with the applicants in my role as Director of Babergh Growth. This is the declaration that I also made for the Kersey application. So
I'll just ask our legal advisor to give his comments on that. Ian?
Indeed, Chairman, that's a kind of declaration that quite often has to be made by a member of this committee who also happens to be a cabinet member or have other responsibilities in the council. It's properly made as a non-pecuniary interest, and the meeting can continue with Councillor Busby here.
Thank you. Good. Thank you, Councillor Busby. Any other declarations of interest? No. Right, then we'll move on. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of October to follow, but I think you've all had an email. I'll ask Rob to comment on this.
Thank you, Chair. So with the minutes, we have received a request from Mr. Russell, our Area Planning Manager, to defer them as a point needs to be urgently checked and was not it was not possible to check this before the meeting today. So with your permission, Chair, we would ask for a deferral on the minutes and bring them to the next available meeting.
We don't need to have a vote on this, do we? I think members, it seemed quite sensible that if there is something urgently needed to be clarified, that we need to get it right before we agree the minutes. Are you all in agreement? No one's putting their hand up against. So we'll take that as you're in agreement that we'll wait for the minutes to come. Agree, yeah. Okay, thank you. Any idea when they'll come back to us, Rob?
There'll be the next meeting, Chair. It's
Next
just
meeting.
one very specific point.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Right, so let me turn over the page. Item 4, are there any petitions, Rob?
No,
Received?
Chair. None received.
Item 5, site inspections. None from members.
Well, actually, Peter, I just wonder how many people on the committee haven't attended the previous site meeting that we had back in 16, 17, because this is a significant application in terms of number, and it's quite a controversial site. I just wonder whether it would be served better by a site visit before we make any further decisions on it.
Could delay it a long time, but I don't know. Rob?
Or perhaps Mark can say that, maybe we've done a drone flyby or whatever it is and got a video.
We haven't got a video this time, Councillor. Obviously, you know what the rules are about doing site visits still, and obviously in the news this week, it's even less likely. So, no, we can't do a site visit, and we haven't got a video of it for you. Sorry.
But it's over 200 houses, effectively, with the care home. It's quite a big application. I'll just, perhaps members that haven't been can.
Councillor Plum, do you got a comment on this?
Well, Chair, I was going to suggest that why don't we hear the officer's presentation and then decide if a site visit of some sort is necessary. At the moment, I am someone who did actually attend the meeting some time ago, and with the rules as they are, is it really necessary to have a site visit if we haven't heard the officer's presentation?
I think you've got a very good point there, Councillor Plum. Councillor Parker, on this issue?
Yeah, just on this issue, Chair. I mean, I take Councillor Busby's point, but I think I'm right in saying that this is reserved matters, isn't it? This application. So, notwithstanding, it's a very significant application. There's no doubt about it. But the site visit itself isn't actually going to change anything other than viewing it. Viewing what we already know, isn't it?
Yep. Yes, I'm inclined to agree with you there. Yes, I think we'll carry on and have the presentation anyway. Officers, any site inspections? Well, no, I don't suppose it can be any from your point of view either. Right, then we'll move on, members. Item number 6 is plan and application for determination by the committee. And we've got Pinewood, Suffolk, 6B. On pages 11 to 32, and the case officer is Bradley Heffer. If you'd like to take us through the application, is this the point, Councillor Busby, you wanted to come in?
Well, sorry to sound like I'm being a nuisance this morning. This is an application that we dealt with in depth some time ago, and I'm just not clear as to what it is we're going to be able to influence this morning. So perhaps if Mark could just clarify that at the earliest part of his presentation, that would be a help, I think.
Well, it's Bradley that's doing the presentation, but Mark will actually clarify that point as the Chief Officer.
Thank you, Chair. So the previous application, which has the 2014 reference, which was heard by committee and given approval in 2016, that was outlined, and the only matter that was explicit in the outline permission was the access, the highway stuff. That was given permission, and effectively everything else would be open for discussion. But the permission did have quite a lot of restrictive conditions, chief of which I would say was probably the schedule of accommodation, which explicitly stated how many 2, 3, 4 bedders there would be, and that was conditioned in. So in some ways, probably the layout and everything that you're going to look at, I would guess, couldn't be changed that much. So that's a condition to consider. There are other conditions like the story heights of the care home and things like that. But effectively the permission was for the access. It was explicitly for a set number of dwellings, not up to, but explicitly 155 dwellings and a 65 bedroom care home. So the two things that definitely have permission are those numbers and the access, and the rest of it is tied into a set of conditions. But you can discuss the scale, the design, the layout and the landscaping.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Case Officer Bradley, would you like to take us through it?
Thank you very much, Chair. And good morning, members. Hopefully with the presentation I can give, it will clarify some points for you in order for your debate. If I can just ask you to clarify whether you can see the screen.
Yep.
You can see that? Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm
Right,
assuming everybody can see it. No one's not put any hands up or anything. Yep, carry on.
Right, thank you. Yes, the application that you're being asked to consider this morning is a reserve matters proposal following the grant of outline planning permission. It's a reserve matters proposal for 135 units, a 65 bed space care home and a cafe on a site at Pinewood off of Sprites Lane and Cottingham Road. This plan is an aerial map of the location and obviously shows the site application, or sorry, the application site. The red dot there is to indicate the position of Belstead House, which is a Grade 2 listed building. And you'll also note residential development to the north and to the east, and obviously the A road network, which is to the west. This plan shows the constraints which may impact on the site, those of which are the listed building, as you can see here, the public rights of way, which don't actually go through the site you're looking at today, which extends up to that point, but they do certainly pass it on that side. And then you've got public rights of way away to the west again. The other point I wanted to just point on this slide, as you can see on here, this line is where the established settlement boundary is, built up area boundary for this part. So this site is currently outside. This is the layout that's being proposed for reserve matters approval. It's for 135 units. The overall planning permission outline was for 155, but that included the land you can see edged blue, excuse me, which is basically Belstead House and its immediate environs. And you'll note on this drawing, you can see faintly that there are some dwellings being shown here, which were part of an approval for in total 20 units to be provided on here. So it's the residual 135 that are being proposed under this reserve matters. The means of access to the site would take place off Cottingham Road, a single point of access. And as my colleague, Mr. Russell's pointed out, that has got planning permission. So the two things that have planning permission are the number of units overall and the means of access. The layout itself is a perimeter block arrangement towards the south of the site, which allows for a denser form of development to be created. And then the residual development away to the north is a looser arrangement from the sort of denser arrangement you've got here. The other element, key element, of course, is the care home at the south, which contains the 65 beds. You'll note that most of the units are detached, semi-detached. There are some instances of terraces. Parking is provided mainly on site, but again, there are instances elsewhere where you'll see parking courts. The other thing to point out is that the site itself does benefit from established planting along its boundaries, along Sprites Lane and along the boundary with the residential development to the north, and that would be unaffected in the main by the development taking place. This plan, excuse me, this plan shows the intended phasing of the works for the overall development, part of which has already got full planning permission. So phase 1 of the development would be Belstead House itself, which would obviously take access off of, as is the case at the moment, off of Sprites Lane. Phase 2 would be the provision of this element of the access road, which would then enable the construction of phases 3 and 4. Phase 5 would lead off of that, off the end of the phase 2 road network. 6 and 7 would follow on. This area of 6 would serve as the overall site compound for the storage of materials, and the last element would be the construction of the care home itself. This plan shows the alternative emergency vehicle access should the access off Cottingham Road for any reason become unavailable for emergency vehicles. This shows the arrangement for an alternative access, which is a requirement of the Highway Authority. You'll note that where the site meets up with Wilding Road, there's a provision of bollards at that point. And also at the end of the turning head here, where the site meets up with Sprites Lane, there's bollards as well, lockable bollards. So therefore, obviously, pedestrians, cyclists can still get through, cars are precluded, but emergency vehicles can get through if needed in the event that the access off of Cottingham Road wasn't available. This plan and the other, or a couple of other plans following on, are useful because they show the topography of the site in relation to the surroundings. There is a significant slope across the site from north to south, approximate north to south. The section you see, AA, for example, is this section here. So this runs all the way down the middle of that perimeter block street. Section B, which is the top half of the cul-de-sac, you can see again runs all the way down in a fairly significant slope. And again, other sections are taken through the site to show how that works, just to give you a flavour of the topography, which is an element which has to be taken into account with the development of the site. And again, further examples of the site sections. These are useful insofar as this is the new proposed development here, and you have existing development adjacent, and it will give you some idea of the relevant heights in relation to existing development. And importantly, you'll note that this dwelling here is at that height. This dwelling being 2-storey would come down to here, so it would sit lower. The garden would sit lower than this particular building. I'll run through the architectural approach that's being taken. As I said in my report, it's a traditional form, but it's modern architectural language really that's being used. The materials themselves are traditional, the use of brick, render, slates and tiles. But the use of fenestration is a more contemporary approach, and elements like brick panelling have gone into the buildings, which again add visual interest, make them, rather than the general sort of residential response that is normally made. I think that these add visual interest, overall visual interest through the buildings. Again, here's some examples of the flat blocks. In the case of the flats, you've got parking underneath the flats above, which, as you recall from the earlier plan, which showed the parking courts, where you've got flats near to parking courts, that allows some surveillance of the parking courts themselves, which again is considered a useful element in overall planning terms. This is the cafe building, which would sit on the open space. And again, it's a fairly straightforward building in terms of design. It's a contemporary design. It's a single volume building, as you'd expect, with a kitchen and toilet facilities. So it fits in well, we think, with the overall design ethos of the site that's being taken. This is the care home development at the end. As you may have picked up from my report, there was a restriction on story heights in the outline application that was granted, and this is the only element within the scheme that is 3-story height, or parts of it are 3-story height, other parts 2-story. It's again following a fairly traditional form in terms of over organisation of the built form, but it has contemporary feel to it as well, and overall would sit, we think, fairly comfortably at the end of that development, bearing in mind it's at the lowest point of the site, as you may recall from what I said earlier. There's two, not much you can actually read in detail on there, but it's 2 floor plans to show how the individual bed spaces would work. I'll finish off with some photographs for you. This is a lead down. This is taken off Google Maps, obviously. The lead down from Cottingham Road into the site. You can just about perceive a bit of a slope as you go down from the photograph. And again, this is the entrance leading into the site from Cottingham Road. Again, hopefully you'll get a flavour of the slope from the difference in the pier or the level of the wall as the road goes down beside it. So there is a slope that's being dealt with here. These are various views across the site itself, which is covered by power lines. The power lines are obviously strategic size ones, as you can see from here, so they would stay in situ. The development would obviously have to take those into account in terms of location of buildings. It's benefits, as I said before, from the screening, established screening. This is heading up towards Belstead House. Belstead House is the other side of this. And there you can see the edge of existing development and hopefully get a flavour of the overall difference in height between the site and as it goes down, just to give an idea of the topography. I think that's all I need to say at this particular point, Chair, but obviously, last slide, which again is taken via Google Earth, because I didn't fancy wandering along the A road, but this will give you an idea of the view across. I think that generally extended views of this site past the footpath network would be afforded via the local A road network, and in this regard I think you can see where the edge of Pinewood sort of comes in relation to that, and the development would come down here. As I say, that concludes my presentation. I think that just to reiterate, from officer's point of view, I don't think this is a scheme that needs to be debated in terms of principle anymore, because the principle is established. But certainly if members have got comments with regard to layout, design, the way the site works, things like that, then obviously as a reserved matter, they're part and parcel of reserved matters consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Members, is there any points of clarification you'd like to ask the case officer? Would you use the hand function? I've got Lee Jameson followed by John Hinton. Lee?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If you could, what is the white area next to the care home, the big white patch on the left of the care home there.
Sorry, Councillor, I should have pointed that out in my response. That looks a little bit like a solar farm, but it is in fact a SUDS feature. The actual detailing of that wouldn't look like that, and I think it's the drawing itself doesn't actually show that in proper detail. But bearing in mind the fall of the land, the actual SUDS feature would be adjacent to the care home on that piece of open space.
Okay.
And one other thing, on the back of the care home, on the roof, are they windows or solar panels? I'm looking at the drawing. This.
I don't know if I'll just get the.
Can you remember the slide number, Councillor Jameson?
No, I didn't. So I think it.
Not to worry.
Sorry, I didn't take a note of that.
If you want
They're-
that, I would have thought.
That one. Yeah,
Sorry, yeah. They're solar panels, Councillor.
Oh, they are
Yes.
solar panels.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Thanks.
Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick questions. Firstly, Mr. Heffer mentioned when talking about the landscaping to the north boundary and onto the Cottingham, the north boundary, and also onto St. Sprites Lane, will be unaffected in the main by the development. What on earth does he mean by unaffected in the main? Because that sounds like a lovely expression which leaves everything open to misinterpretation. Secondly, the question would probably be more addressed to Mark than it would be to Mr. Heffer, and that is that if this was approved in 2016, is it out of time? And lastly, I think it was slide 30. It indicates an information board when it's looking out across the countryside, which rather implies that that is a public open space already. I understood that there was a sort of greenways project that went across most of that green land along that side of Pinewood between the developments and the A14. Could he explain just what the use of that board is and when it's going to be covered in houses and concrete?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. With regard to the first point, yeah, that was an unfortunate phrase in the main. I think that the belt of trees, for example, that's shown along the boundary here and hedging, some of that would need to be cleared in order for this development to take place. I think the key point is that the ones on the edge here serve as a purpose for screening, and in the case of some areas will be augmented by new planting. So there will be in this area for here, for example, in order for these buildings to sit there, some clearance would scrub and lower vegetation would have to take place in any event, and the land level would have to be levelled out slightly in order to get the development in. So that's what I meant by that. The application, the Reserve Matters application submission was submitted right at the end of the period of the outline requirement, but it was submitted in time. So it was a valid valid Reserve Matters application. The third point, I think, was to do with the board. I think there are certainly interpretation board. There's an interpretation board on the site, and I think there's a finger post on there as well. But the status of this land isn't POS. It's not public open space. So I think that whilst there is an interpretation board on there, the outline application did establish that you could get residential development taking place on that land, and it wasn't zoned and it isn't zoned as public open space now.
Thank you. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Chair. Bradley, can you tell me if you defined the number of car parking spaces within the nursing home boundary?
Sorry, Councillor. Yes, on the issue of parking in the care home, unfortunately, I did omit that in my report, but I can give you a quick breakdown because I've got a note here somewhere just to clarify that.
Yes, if you can clarify that point for us all.
I will do. In relation to the care home, hold on, if I quickly get back to, if I can, there it is. Yeah, we're talking about this area here. Within that area, there are 36 spaces. The current standards require 1 space per 3 bed spaces. And I think in total, 1 space, 1 space per full-time equivalent staff. And based on the number of spaces and the number of, against that standard, that does actually hit the standard. So we're happy that the amount of spaces in there matches the standard that's required for the care home under a C2 use.
Because in fact, if it was over, if it was over full, then visitors and practitioners are going to park somewhere else on the site, aren't they?
Yes, yeah. But we're content that there's sufficient. Then. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bradley.
Councillor Ayres.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit concerned, as I'm a chairman of a residential home in Sudbury, the fact that it's 3-storey, and we had a problem when the 1 lift we had broke down. What is the arrangements for the lifts or exiting the people if there was a fire? Have the fire people been consulted? Thank you.
Good point.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I think in this particular case, we would rely on the requirements of the building regulations. I think in terms of building regs, there have to be safe means of exit and entrance into a building and provision of lifts if necessary, depending on number of, as I understand it, number of people in the building and floors and things. But yes, as well as the principle being established and the look of the building being acceptable, it would have to accord with the building regs requirements, which includes the safety elements of it.
Can I come back on that, please, Chair?
Yep.
If there is a fire, you would not be allowed to use the lifts. And if some of those people are quite disabled, you would have a serious problem. So I think we should look into that a little more. Thank you.
I think it might also, Councillor Ayres, be a question you could put to the agent. Might be a good point.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. Bradley, you mentioned the heights of the buildings in relation to the neighbouring properties, and it shows on your cross sections that they were the same or lower. Where they are right at the edge of the development. Is there any sort of condition that might be applied to ensure that the development, those houses near the edge, do not end up being higher? I mean, if the developer has to suddenly excavate to ensure that they are at that height and decided not to excavate, could there be a condition attached, or is there a condition attached?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. As part of the outline planning permission, there was a condition attached regarding levels of the site in relation to existing and finished floor levels of the buildings that would be built across the site, not just on that boundary, which is, as you say, a key point, but across the whole site. And I think not least that was a reflection of the topography issue at the time that was considered. So there is that control in place at the outline stage, and it's something that has been considered as part of this planning application.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mary, your hand's still up. Did you want to come back? Councillor, thank you. Right. Councillor Busby.
Thank you, Chair. Just a small point. Page 27.
Let me get there.
10.4, we're talking about acoustic materials and whether a fence is required, etc. The last sentence says the health protection officer recommended that garden fences should be of a close boarded type with a minimum height of 1.8 metres. We're talking fairly small gardens here, and with a minimum height of 1.8, that would make them very, very claustrophobic. I think that should be a maximum height of 1.8.
Yes.
Depends whether you like your privacy, I suppose. Anyway.
Yes. Just some background for that, Councillor. I think that when the Reserve Matters application came in, I think that my colleague in Environmental Health queried the issue of noise protection as part of the discharge conditions application that was made. And I think that as a result of that, it was the applicant's acoustic engineers demonstrated that it wasn't necessary to put in an acoustic fence down one boundary with the A road network, for example. But I think that's a question of wording in relation to what you're reading there is, you know, we wouldn't want to see anything more than 1.8 metres high, because, as you say, that would be quite oppressive for the people living in there. If my colleague is advising me that 1.8 metres high is appropriate, then, you know, that would be the limit in terms of the sort of boundary treatment that we would expect to see.
Yeah, but in that case, I think you should take the word minimum out. I mean, it only takes one, and if you drive down Cottingham Road, you will see that it does only take one person to significantly alter the visibility, attractiveness of the estate by doing strange things to the house. And you could imagine somebody putting up a 3-metre fence, and it would make a mess. So I think you should just take the word minimum out.
Yeah, well, I think that the landscaping condition that was imposed at the time of the outline planning permission would have included details of that, but that's certainly a point that we can consider, you know, as part of that discharge of that particular condition, because we're not asking them to discharge landscaping per se as part of this Reserve Matters approval, because it is covered by the outline planning permission that was granted.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's no other hands up, so I assume there's no other questions. We'll move on then to public speakers. We have Parish Council representative Beryl Culver to speak. You have 3 minutes in which to address the committee. I'll ask Rob to do the timing. Thank you. When you're ready, it's over to you.
Chair, just before we start, could we just ask Mr. Heffer, the case officer, to just take down the presentation?
Ah, right, sorry.
Or his screen. Thank you, Bradley. Thank you, Chair. Ready whenever you are.
Right, let's first get the Parish Council up and running. Are you there? I can't see or hear you at the moment.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes, we still can't. Yes, I now see you. Hopefully everybody else can now see you. Yes, your time hasn't started, so don't worry. Thank you for having patience with us. Right, Rob, when you're ready, madam, you start, he'll time you. Thank you.
Thank you. Pinewood Parish Council wishes to object to the application on the following grounds. There appears to be a change from the original planning statement that dwellings will be predominantly for the over 55s, but Reserved Matters documentation states that 75 units will be for the open and affordable markets and only 57 for the 55 plus demographic. The original argument for this development was it would cater mostly for this age group. Why has this changed? Though you say that access was settled at the outline stage, we've had to seek clarification as to the status and use of Sprites Lane, a byway, and Cottingham Road, regarding the whole development and have yet to receive any clarity prior to this meeting. Para 5.4 of the documentation for the hearing states that, by way of clarification, it is the case that all vehicular traffic accessing this site would utilise the approved access of Cottingham Road. However, a response received by this council to our questions to the planning officer about Sprites Lane states that it will provide entry and egress for the 20 dwellings linked to Belstead House, and it will also be available for entry into the site for the remaining 135 dwellings. These statements seem to be contradictory and should be clarified. If Cottingham Road is to be the sole access for the 135 dwellings and care home, the council is extremely disappointed that once again Babergh District Council has refused to take into consideration our concerns as to the suitability of this road for the extra traffic. A public inquiry some years ago ruled that because of its winding and steep nature, resulting in compromised visibility, Cottingham Road was unsuitable for an increase in traffic use. The Highways Department has refused to consider any mitigation measures for Cottingham Road. There are at least already 185 dwellings currently using this road, as it's a feeder for a number of other roads, and the development will cause it to rise to more than 350. I've learnt today that there are 36 spaces for care home that take the development itself to over at least 150 traffic movements. If Cottingham Road is to be the sole access, then surely this contravenes Suffolk design policy and guidance given at the outline planning stage that for developments over 150, then 2 access routes are required. No consideration appears to have been given to the amount of traffic generated by the care home of 65 residents. Cottingham Road leads on to a Scrivener Drive, which is often at a standstill because of other recent developments. There's also been an unwillingness to conduct an up-to-date traffic survey of the area, as it was accepted that the 2015 survey was flawed.
It's time, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, have any points of clarification you'd like to ask the Parish Council representative? I see no hands up at the moment. Let me just see if I can scroll down, because there was some at the bottom. No, there's no one. Okay, I'll take that. There isn't any questions to you. I'll try and put those couple of points that you brought up to the officers in due course. Right, thank you. In fact, I will ask the officers now. The change of the age group from the over 55s that the Parish Council commented about, and also I think she said there was an increase in the traffic of 135 or something. Can you possibly clarify on that, Bradley?
Yes, thank you, Chair. With regard to the mix, again, as I think my colleague said, basically the mix of development is within the Section 106 agreement that was signed, and there is a condition that was attached to the outline planning permission that says that's got to follow what was actually submitted as part of the application. So there is no change in that from what was shown originally. And in truth, as I've said in the report, I know that locally there is a lot of concern about the traffic generation arising from this, but that was a point that was considered at the outline stage. And I know as part of this, receiving comments on this, that I know local residents do feel very strongly about that. But the Highway Authority have not raised this as an issue with us. As part of the consideration of this reserved matters, they must at the time have considered that Cottingham Road and the surrounding network was suitable to take the overall number of units, including, of course, the 65-bed care home.
Thank you. Councillor Parker, is yours a question to the Parish Council, or?
Yes, Chair, and I've come in very late, but I'm wondering if
that's fine. If you're happy to take the question, Parish Council. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. You're still muted. No, you're muted. I can't hear you. Yes, we can now. Thank you. You're happy to take the question. It was a bit late, but the councillor would like to put a question to you.
I'll do my best.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies, Councillor Calver, for late representation, but I just thought I'd sneak this question in, only because, if you don't mind me saying, some of the concerns, or all of the concerns that you've raised there, are very valid concerns around traffic movements, etc. Obviously, we are here today to discuss the reserved matters, so the details of appearance, landscaping, layout, and scale. But it appears that you don't have any objections to those items that we're deciding today. Can you just clarify for us?
Yes. As far as we can see, having read the planning documentation and responses, we couldn't. Our main concerns still focused on the lack of clarity we'd received about the vehicular and access to the sites.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That question, thank you, Councillor Parker. That question has been answered by the officer concerned. Councillor Busby, have you got a question for the Parish Council?
Well, it's just to help with the discussion from Beryl that the site was predominantly for the over 55s. In fact, there was a section for the over 55s, but the affordable units were supposed to be for local workers, particularly those that might be working in their care home. So I don't think they were banded as over 55s. However, I do take odds with what the officer says about the highways view of traffic movements, and I sympathise with the parish in terms of, well, this traffic survey was done on the 23rd and 24th of July in 2014. So it's 6 years.
I think I need a question to the Parish Council. You can take this point up in debate.
I'll bring that in later, in that case.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your understanding. There's no other hands up, Parish Council, so we'll move on. Thank you very much for taking part. I'll now move on. We don't have a supporter, so I will now ask the applicant to speak, Craig Weston, and you, sir, have 3 minutes in which to address the committee. I'll ask Rob to time you in. Can you first of all show yourself and turn your mic on and your camera so that we can see you?
Morning.
I can hear you, can't see you yet.
Camera should be on.
No, it's not at the moment. Wait a minute, it's come through. Yes, I can see Craig Weston. Okay, Rob, when you're ready. Okay, Mr. Weston.
Okay, so good morning, Chairman and Councillors. I'm Craig Weston, Director of Windskeeling Architects and agent for the application presented to you today. The site is owned by the applicant Rural Community Housing Limited, a local family-run business with a purpose of providing homes and affordable housing tailored for local communities. As highlighted in the officer's report, this application relates to the reserved matters submission of the outline approval granted by this committee in 2016. The outline approval established the principle of 155 dwellings of mixed tenure and a 65-bedroom care home accessed off Cottingham Road and in part Sprites Lane. This approval has been recognised in the emerging local plan consultation documentation and is included within the built-up area boundary of Pinewood and the Great Ipswich Fringe. We're grateful to the planning officer and consultees of this application for working with our design team to ensure that every effort is made to refine proposals to address topics including the drainage, landscaping, the highways geometry and streetscape. The application presented accords with the terms of the signed Section 106 agreement and maintains the intent of providing a mixed community with a focus upon the over 50s accommodation and affordable rented homes. The design of the proposals has been developed to provide a contemporary scheme with a fabric first approach to provide modern, efficient homes of traditional form but with contemporary detail. The majority of the properties are 2 stories. But this is combined with a number of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. The comments within the officer's report in relation to bungalows are acknowledged, and the developer in this instance has taken the approach of providing homes capable of adaptation through the inclusion of through-the-floor lifts. These home interventions follow the principles of what's known as lifetime homes, and furthermore, flat provision provides accommodation for those less mobile. The development presented to you is for the delivery of 135 homes combined with the already consented 20 new homes to the east part of the site. The site is in a sustainable location. All consultee responses have been addressed to their satisfaction, and the science section 106 includes significant financial contributions to the local infrastructure and services. And therefore ask that the councillors follow the officer's recommendation and approve this application for reserved matters. And I'll be here to answer any other questions.
Thank you very much. Members, does anybody have any questions for the applicant, the agent, sorry? I see no hands yet. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. I wondered if you've been working with an established care home provider on the plan for the care home to ensure that it was provided sort of suitable accommodation and, you know, considered things like ambulance bay, you know, and those sort of issues that must be very important for a care home.
We haven't got a care home provider in place at this point, but as a practice, we've worked on a great number of care homes, so we're quite well versed in the requirements. And I'll just take this opportunity, if I may, just to clarify that point about access and egress that was raised earlier. So in terms of the lift provision, we've got a total number of 2 lifts provided in the care home. And as the officer mentioned, we would be obliged to deliver the scheme in accordance with building regulations. And it may be, as part of that design, the fire officer will request one of those lifts to be a firefighting lift. But failing that, there will be a plan in place to ensure safe egress for all of the residents.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren. Councillor McLaren?
Yeah, sorry, Chair.
Sorry.
Difficulty with the buttons, unfortunately.
I know.
Mr. Weston, my questions are going to be similar to the previous councillor's questions. If you are building a care home without any care home provider in that, what recognition of the CQC standards have been taken into account?
Can you answer that, Mr. Weston?
So, as I say, we're well versed in the design of care homes, and we've applied our experience and knowledge to that to develop this scheme. And that will be a matter for compliance with CQC. So this is, at this point, this is a sort of planning scheme. There will be other elements that need to be taken into account with the provider. We acknowledge that. But the principle of it and the quantum and the space requirements, we believe, accords with those requirements.
Because registration is obviously, there's encouragement by the CQC to be involved in the early development of any building and layout. Would you accept that?
I would accept that. All I would say is that we have been engaging with care home providers, and given the stage of this application and in terms of the phasing of the delivery of the site, they'd want to know that it's implementable in terms of the access and that is in place before they come on board. So that's sort of where we are. So we have interest, but We don't have one on board at present.
Okay. Can I just discuss with you about the amount of vehicles that might be coming into the space? Certainly, the officer said about the parking spaces based on a format. In my experience, for a 65-bedded care home, there would be actually probably 40 people on site during the day, every day, without visitors and visiting professionals. So I disagree slightly with the amount of car parking spaces, but I am concerned about the access for ambulances and fire tenders. I'm not sure whether your care home is going to be linked to the fire service, but most large care homes are, which means that when the fire alarm goes off, 2 fire tenders will arrive uncalled for, and that can cause problems looking at the access on the site. That's a lot of vehicles if you then add ambulances for patients or residents who frequently go to hospital.
Councillor McLaren, it's obviously a very good and important question, but I've got Mark Russell, the officer, who wants to help out on this. But I'll then go and ask the applicant afterwards if he wishes still to comment. All right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Officer Russell.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. I think you probably can guess what I'm about to say, and the concerns are understood. But as a general rule, if there's other legislation covering it, then we don't duplicate it in planning. So the Care Quality Commission, that's dealt with elsewhere, and certainly building regs, that's dealt with elsewhere. If the care home did not comply with the measures which the council is quite rightly talking about, they wouldn't get a licence, they wouldn't be able to run, they wouldn't get a fire certificate and all of that. So that's dealt with by that legislation. And whilst we can think about it and be aware of it, it shouldn't inform our decision here.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you. I've got 2 more speakers, hands up, but Mr. Weston, did you want to make any comment on what the councillor had asked, although we have had the planning officer help out?
No.
Thank you. Then I'll move on. Thank you. I've got next, who was it? Councillor Busby, followed by Councillor Jameson.
Just a couple of design queries, really. In 2.9, it mentions that metal cladding would also be utilised on some units. I wonder if you could just explain that to us, because we're not used to that kind of thing. And then in 6.7, you talk about some flats and cart lodge units which consist of residential accommodation located above garages. What kind of insulation would you be using? Because it can be very cold above an open cart lodge.
Good point.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so the metal cladding aspect, that relates to largely the dormer window construction details and or the the projections that you may have seen on the care home building. So to tie them together, we would use a powder coated metal or zinc product, which would be akin to lead detailing, but it's much more lighter weight and is less prone to lead theft. So it's not on the elevations as such as a cladding wrap. It's on particular discrete elements of the design. The other comment in respect of cart lodges and insulation levels, again, it would come down to building regulations and the our anticipation of providing high quality fabric first approach. So we would be using most likely PIR insulation within the floor zone between garage and the accommodation, and likewise within the roof construction. Hopefully that answers that point.
Thank you. Councillor Jameson, followed by Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Mr. Weston. The police have highlighted a number of concerns, particularly around the parking and alleyways. I wondered if they've been looked at and it's actioned at all.
Yes, I believe those comments came in prior to a number of changes that we made with your officer in terms of the parking courts and so on. So we reconfigured some of the street scenes so that those areas were passively surveilled, and sort of neighbouring properties overlook parking areas so their streets. So many of those areas have been taken into account, and we've also got some gated access to gardens and so on in terms of that security point as well.
Okay, and another point, I noticed you've got a lot of PV panels on a lot of the roofs, which is good, but I wondered why you've not done every roof. Even some houses pointing in the same direction, they've not all got them.
Every property does have PVs, it just may be that they're on a different elevation. So
I was looking at the drawing, it doesn't look like they do, but they do they? So.
Yes, I believe so. Yes, they should do. Every property within our sustainability appraisal and documentation that was submitted includes PV provision.
All right. And there'll be EV parking points as well for the properties?
Well, at the time of the consent, I don't think that was a requirement, but I'm not precluding it. It may be something that could be implemented, and as many of the properties have on-plot parking, they will be able to install a localized EV charging point for their own curtilage parking.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just a question for Craig. The area of land, the site surrounding is 4.2 hectares. Can he just tell me exactly in size the play area? Because you say 10%. What would be what area of that land is in acreage or in meterage, please? The LAP, the 10% open space provision, please, Craig.
Mr. Weston.
Yes, sorry, I don't have that figure immediately in front of me, but the play area is the sort of area near the sort of cafe community space, and that is the public open space. So I believe your officers may have that information.
I was just going to say, do our officers have it to hand? Do our officers have that information? Bradley or Mark?
I think you're going to have to ask Bradley for that, Chair.
I'm looking at the moment, Chair. Hopefully I should be able to provide that information imminently. Sure. I'm just checking the right drawing. Hold on a second.
No, we'll try and help you there, Mr. Weston.
And can I, the other part of that question would be as well, the area of maintenance for that area, is that going to be taken on by a management? Yeah, it's nothing to do with Babergh, correct?
Councillor, I believe that is all included as part of the Section 106 agreement. So it would be a management company with an aspiration, as Councillor Busby picked up on. We're hoping to provide accommodation for sort of key workers on the site, and the aspiration will be one of those, maybe a gardener themselves.
Thank you. Officer Heffer, have you got the answer?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's annotated on the drawing, Councillor, as being 1,588 square metres open space village green. That's how the annotation reads.
Okay. No more hands up. My Officer Robert Carmichael, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a point to bring to your attention that we've had where the Councillor Hinton has just had to leave the meeting on an unexpected call. So he won't be able to take part in the debate or vote because he was not here for all the information. Just to point out now, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, he does have or can have some personal problems at the moment. Our thoughts are with him. Right, any other questions to the agent? No, I see no hands up other than Mary's, but I think it was left up.
Peter, I can see Melanie Barrett's hand up. I don't know, that's a leftover, and Adrian Osborne's as well.
Adrian's just spoken. I haven't got Melanie's up.
No, mine's not up.
No.
Then my screen is, yeah, it's gone now. Yeah, sorry.
Adrian, your hand's still up. If you'd like to put it down, that would be helpful. Right, I'm assuming there's no one else to ask you questions, so I'm going to move on. I will now ask the ward member, Councillor Sack Norman, to speak. You, sir, have 5 minutes in which to address the committee. Is he present?
He is not present, Chair, I'm afraid. He has sent his apologies that he couldn't be here today. So if you're happy, Chair, I will move on and read the statement that we've received from Councillor Rick Hardacre.
Right, well, I'll go to the next one. Then the other ward member who can speak, Councillor Rick Hardacre, has 5 minutes to address the committee, and he's not present either, but you do have a statement to read on his behalf.
Yep, I'll read that now, Chair.
Thank you very much.
So, message from Councillor Hardacre. I'm afraid I won't be able to make it to today's planning meeting, but I want to say that I completely agree with and support the objections of both Pinewood and Sproughton parishes. I live very close to this site and have done so since 2014. I simply cannot understand how anyone can walk down Cottingham Road through the wooden gate and gaze at the view across the valley towards Belstead, taking in the trees, shrubs and long grasses of the Suffolk countryside, and think to themselves, let's concrete over this. Countless people from Pinewood, boxed in by dual carriageways, retail parks and urban sprawl, found solace in this space during the summer months. I saw a deer here in the middle of lockdown. It is the gateway to the Brookside Green Place, winding all the way from here to the Orwell. I urge the Planning Committee, officers and Rural Community Housing Limited to work together to preserve this space. It needs to be kept rural for the benefit of the community, with housing limited to small-scale development in the enclosed area to the north. And that's where it concludes, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, members, I think you've heard that, so we will note that. He's not here, so we can't question it. We'll now go into debate. Again, perhaps you can use the hands up function, but I will just start with the first alphabetical name, which is Councillor Ayres, because I see no other hands up. Councillor Ayres, did you want to comment?
Not at the moment, I'm thinking.
Right, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Busby?
Yeah, Chair, if I could go back to the point I was going to make, which is really why I asked the question at the beginning about what we can approve and what we can't approve and what our scope is. Because, as I was saying, the traffic survey that was done for the original application was done on the 23rd and 24th of July in 2014. Well, 2 points about that. One is it was in the middle of the summer holidays, so therefore no traffic for Suffolk 1, and there was a lot of people away on holiday, of course, so it would be impacted by that. So much reduced numbers, and it was 2014, so 6 years ago. Now, 6 years may not sound like a lot in some areas, but in that particular area and at that particular time, when Highways commented on their traffic survey, there was no Wolsey Grange. There was no, they couldn't have taken that into account. That was 1,200 houses. There was no 250 houses designated in Copdock and Washbrook, 750 in Capel St Mary. There was the no Aldi superstore. There was the no pub, no restaurant, no vets, no Suffolk 1 at full capacity. So the traffic survey that they used in 2014 now is totally irrelevant, totally irrelevant. And really, I think it ought to be redone at an appropriate time to justify the ability of traffic to move out of the proposed estate. I like the design, I like the estate. As I said before, it's just in the wrong place. If people don't know Cottingham Road, which is one of the reasons why I suggested a site visit, if you could get up Google Maps to see where it comes out, it's almost on the roundabout the Copdock roundabout, which is an extremely busy roundabout, the Tesco's roundabout, and people can queue there for half an hour to get out. So my concern is that the traffic, the transport in that particular area, and I think we should do another transport survey, and therefore I propose that we defer this until that's been done.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the officers whether they want to comment on that before I go for seconder. Okay. Councillor, Officer Bradley.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know what Mark may have further comments on this, but all I can say in terms of, sorry, I'll switch my camera on as well. All I can say in terms of the comments that Councillor Busby has raised, again, is to reiterate that as the outline application was approved, you're not considering issues of traffic generation under the reserve matters proposal. Now, if you feel that the reserve matters proposal needs alteration because of various issues, that's fair enough. But my advice is that we haven't had an objection from the Highway Authority. The fact that this has an outline application would be factored in as part of loading onto the highway network in relation to other newer developments that have taken place in the area. So the Highway Authority would have had to have taken that into account, I would have thought. And again, our advice from that authority is not that this is going to cause a traffic problem. So as I said before, I acknowledge the comment, but it's not something, unfortunately, that is something we feel that we can support as planning officers.
Thank you. Officer Russell, did you want to make any comment?
I was going to say the same as what Brad just said, Chair. Basically, the conversation about the validity of the travel of the assessment of traffic, it was done then. It was accepted by committee members then. I know it was 6 years ago, but on that basis, we have an outline permission for this number of houses, so we can't really revisit that now.
No, thank you. So I'm going to ask my legal advisor. In view that there's been a recommendation put forward, I know I haven't asked for a seconder yet. Can this be ruled out in view of the fact that we're discussing certain points and highways have made all their comments? What is your view on a deferment?
Well, sorry, Chair, I must have. I was trying to follow. I may have lost the thread at one point. That a proposal has been made.
I haven't had a seconder.
And just remind me who made it. Who made the proposal?
Councillor Busby.
And that was for a defer for the decision to be deferred.
On the question of the traffic and wanting a more up-to-date traffic survey done.
The officer's advice, which I endorse very firmly, is that we have, as Mark and Bradley have said, we have an outline consent which is well beyond any legal challenge or anything like that. The applicant is entitled to expect that reserved matters approval will be granted to put that into effect. There may be argument about all the matters that we've been discussing today: scale, design, layout, landscaping. A reserved matters approval can be refused if the decision maker, in this case committee, thinks any of those are inappropriate, wrong. But I think if a resolution is put, and if it gets, then it must be voted on. I think it's just that the officer's advice is very clear that this would be a difficult one to put into effect. That's all we can say, really, as officers.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Busby, I'm going to come back to you. Do you wish to pursue your request for deferment on the reasons you've already stated?
Difficult.
I know. That's why I've got to put back to you.
It's, I always think of the phrase that when you're in a hole, stop digging. But I'm not necessarily thinking that applies to me, but I'm thinking about when we get in a hole in Pinewood, we should stop adding extra housing to it because it's bad enough as it is without adding any more. But if the officers are saying that we've got no room to manoeuvre on this point, then there seems little point in asking for a deferment. But can I just have Mark confirm that there isn't an angle that we can use to defer it for this reason.
I think he's made that quite clear, but Mark?
I can't think of one, Councillor, sorry. I think, the discussion was had at outline. The following applications elsewhere took into consideration the permissions that were existing, so the Highway Authority would have been aware.
I can see you're getting nods from the legal people.
Well, yeah, I think that as I'm sure Mark would agree, the outline consent says the applicant may expect the 135 units and the 65 bed care facility and the access to be provided. It's only if you think there is a reconfiguration of the design and layout that would lead to a different highways result. And I'm not hearing that at all. I don't think you are, Mark, either. So no.
All right, thank you. I think
okay, I withdraw my proposal in that case.
Thank you very much, Councillor Busby. We have Councillor Parker next.
Well, you did, Chair, but since Councillor Busby has withdrawn his proposal, I've no need to speak. I mean, I will just comment on the fact that I absolutely concur with the officers here, Councillor Busby's withdrawn, so we don't need to labour on the point at all. But the question is, if you take that to the logical conclusion, where would we have gone with that? I'm not sure there was a logical conclusion, but anyway, it's not on the table anymore, so I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members wish to comment? I see no hands up. Councillor Barrett.
Well, it looks as though we have to move to a vote if there is no debate.
Well, I haven't had a proposal yet.
Well,
one way or the other.
I will propose approval of the application in line with the officer recommendation.
Taken the point on board about the fence to be a maximum 1.8.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a small point, but
yeah.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, as opposed to a minimum 1.8.
That's right,
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yep, that's correct. Thank you very much, okay. Councillor Barrett. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jameson.
Not going to second it, but I just wondered if we do approve. Can we
I need a seconder first, then we can go into debate.
I was going to say before can we have a condition on the EV parking points?
Well, you can propose that in a moment, and I see no reason why that can't be added in. But I just need a seconder. Councillor Parker has come back.
Thank you, Chair. I'll second the proposal, but I'm interested to hear what Councillor Jameson has to say.
Yeah. I think your point on electric charging points could be very effective. So it's over to you now.
Yeah. I was going to say if the approval goes forward, can we have a condition that the electric EV parking points are put in for the properties?
I don't know if it can be done for all of them, but there are parking spaces, isn't there? What is the officer's view on that? And then I'll see whether the proposer and seconder will accept it. I think it's a good idea.
Well, my understanding of what Mr. Weston said, Chair, was that they are certainly open to that approach, particularly in curtilage provision. So I can't see that would present any problems in terms of imposing that sort of condition. One thing I should have mentioned in my presentation, which I didn't, is one of the suggested conditions in the report relates to a construction management plan, which is very important. That is already covered by the outline and also the section 106. So that doesn't need to be repeated in the reserved matters if you're minded to accept the recommendation. So I thought it's just useful to point that out as well.
Yeah, so going back to the electric charging points, you're saying that the likelihood is that we will get some of the electric charging points put in certain curtilage areas.
Yeah.
I think that's most likely the most we can do at this stage, but I think as a point we need to try and flag up when the outlines and what have you come forward in future. Councillor Jameson, are you happy with that?
Yeah, if that's the best we can do, that's fine. Yeah.
I'll ask the proposer, Councillor Barrett, and then the seconder, Councillor Parker, whether they're prepared to accept that as part of their proposal. Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see electric charging points on a few sites, I suppose, perhaps adjacent to the care home for workers who are attending work. I'm not sure about every house. So,
no, I think we have to be realistic.
But yeah, I would like to see some available for people to use.
Councillor Parker.
Yeah, absolutely support that, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Jameson for raising the point. Thank you.
Yep, good. Okay, members. Oh, Councillor Osborne, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one point as regards to the ecology and biodiversity. Could I ask that the conditions or an agreement with the developer that the Swift boxes or Swift bricks are put into the housing areas that he is proposing to as in other applications that have gone forward? Could I ask that his approval of that and that of the proposer and seconder? Thank you.
Officer Bradley, is that taken care of in the conditions?
It isn't taken care of, and that's a good point, Councillor Osborne. I think that because these are constructed in masonry, it didn't. Again, I don't think that would present a problem with the developer actually according with that with Swift boxes. So I feel confident we could add a condition to that effect without creating any issues.
Yeah, you're quite right, Bradley. The position with Swift boxes is they don't have to be brick. They can be put into areas of other development of those designs. Thank you.
So long as we're realistic. Are you happy with that, Councillor Barrett?
Yes, that's I support that.
Good. Councillor Parker?
Yeah, absolutely. And again,
good.
Thanks, Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, that was a good point as well. Right, I don't see any more hands up anywhere. So, right then, members, I think we've got to the end of it. We'll go to the vote now. I will ask the Governance Officer, Robert Carmichael, to do a roll call, and we will then vote. Over to you, Robert.
Thank you, Chair. Just before we go to the vote, could we just have a brief clarification on the exact wording for the electric vehicle charging condition, just so that all members are clear on what we're voting for?
I think it was that we'd like to see some, but we are being realistic about it. Wasn't that correct, Councillor Jameson?
It was, yes, Chair. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think we just need something a bit more concrete, just to make sure that when it goes in the midst that can be and the decision.
Well, I think
so
that
Mark,
meant,
I think is gonna.
Shall we just have a chair? Sorry, Chair. Should we just have a condition saying a scheme for shall be agreed? No, leave it like that. A scheme for shall be agreed and implemented.
Yeah.
As agreed. Is that okay?
Well, I think that's acceptable because we're not going to be unreasonable, but we don't expect them to be unreasonable. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Everyone's happy.
If that's agreed, then I will go to the vote. So if members could please respond with for, against or abstain. So Councillor Sue Ayres?
For.
Councillor Melanie Barrett?
For.
Councillor Peter Beer?
For.
Councillor David Busby?
For.
Councillor Hinton is, as we've previously discussed, cannot take part. Councillor Lee Jameson?
For.
Councillor Mary McLaren?
For.
Councillor Adrian Osborne?
For.
Councillor Alison Owen?
For.
Councillor Lee Parker?
For.
And Councillor Stephen Plum?
For.
Thank you, Chair. I make that unanimously for.
And this is the legal advisor. I agree it was a unanimous vote for.
Thank you very much. Well, members, we've got to the end of today's schedule. The date of the next meeting, I did say it somewhere.
It's the 18th, Chair.
18th of November. Okay. So unless you're any different, we'll be back here on the 18th. Thank you very much and good day to you all. Thank you.